In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
Yes, indeed. Saturday afternoon. What a great day for a Chowder Fest. And a whole bunch of other stuff. Glad to have you with me. I'm Brian. Welcome to Freedom Fools. Yes, feels good to be back in the regular chair today. After a few days for Ken Pittman, I will be in for Barry on Monday, but I'll also be doing Brian's Beat Monday evening. How are you today? Heading over to the Chowder Festival? If you are, I drove by earlier just to see how things were going as they were setting up on my way into the radio station. And it looked like, everything was going well. The sun was starting to peak. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? Maybe this Saturday thing in the Chowder Fest isn't such a bad thing. For many years, the Chowder Fest used to be on a Sunday, and I thought Sunday was a good day. And that might be because I've been doing these shows on Saturdays, and basically I can't get over to the Chowder Fest because I'm here. But anyway, have a good time. I think Tim is going to be there. Tim is supposed to be one of the judges during the Chowder Fest. So if you see Tim, go up to him, say hi, let him know which chowder you liked best. 508-996-0500 is how you get onto the program today. Let's see. October 11th, Newspaper Carrier Day. For a brief time, while I was in sixth grade, I used to deliver the newspaper. The Framingham News is what it was called. And my route was basically right around the block. If you could do a rectangle, my street, the street directly above, and the two side streets. And I may have had 28, 29, 30 customers. It was pretty cool, but it was time consuming. That's what I remember most. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And if I was late with the newspaper, somebody would be calling out, "Hey, where's my paper?" And of course, everybody knew who I was and knew where I lived. So I remember one day I ducked out to go to a Red Sox game. And I got back, if you go to an afternoon Red Sox game and you're taking the Green Line trolley and taking that trolley back to Newton, and then a parent is picking you up and giving you a ride back to the house, you're lucky if you get back by 5:45. And I remember, I got the papers, got to go deliver. And wouldn't you know it, I'd already received a couple of calls. One from a neighbor, "Brian Thomas, again, you always late with a paper." Boy, was I glad to give it up. But, $14 a week. We think that's chump change today, and it is. But $14 a week back then, and we're talking mid-1960s, not bad. Not bad. You made 14, you put 7 in the bank, you kept 7 for yourself, and believe me, I could easily live off of $7 a week when you're living at home. Newspaper Carrier Day is today. It is also World Day Against the Death Penalty. And didn't I just hear something in the ABC News about the Luigi guy for killing the head of United Health? His defense attorney is trying to get one of the charges dismissed so Luigi doesn't get the death penalty. Today is World Day Against the Death Penalty. And doesn't it stand to reason? It is also World Mental Health Day. 1910, the hero of San Juan Hill. He took a chance. Teddy Roosevelt became the first president of the United States of America to get on board an airplane and fly. And it wasn't a DC-10 or anything like that. It was one of those, crop duster type planes. But he did it, 1910. NASA launched its first successful manned Apollo mission, Apollo 7, on this date in 1968. That leads us to the Bryansby quote of the day. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Thomas Edison. I understand it took him 10,000 attempts to finally come up with that incandescent light bulb. So I guess he realized just keep on going, pursue. And he did. All right, I mentioned the Chowder Fest is going on today. If you heard me on for Chris on yesterday, we were talking about how cold it was in the morning and whatnot. And I said, well, one way to get around the fact that we don't want to turn the heat on, I'm going to go out and buy a blanket. Well, I didn't do it yesterday, but I did do it today. I bought 2 blankets because I thought the price was good enough. And I figured, well, a woman friend might get cold and might want a longer blanket. So I got 2 blankets. Interesting to note, one of the blankets made in China, which was another question that I had. I wonder where blankets come from. I wasn't thinking flying carpets or anything like that, but I was curious, do blankets get made in the good old US of A? Is Donald Trump trying to get the blanket business back in country? One of those blankets came from China. The other blanket, India. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't companies here in the United States making blankets. It means that over at Walmart, where I was looking, they did not have any blankets made in the USA. I don't know if that's a worthwhile business for anybody to get into, but I am telling you, the blankets, they look pretty good, and they're certainly inexpensive. When you think about buying a blanket, spending with tax $22, $23, $24. In this day and age, I think that's pretty good. So I don't know that we can get the necessary people together here in the United States to build blankets. And maybe this goes to the larger subject. I don't know if you want to tie it in with immigration or what, but we talk about the price of heating, gas, and electricity, and food, and all the different things that are going up in price. Why should we think that the blanket business would come back to the United States? I don't know how much it costs to make a blanket. I don't know how much it costs to make a blanket in China or India. But I'm willing to guess it takes more than 1 hour, more than 2 hours to make a blanket. Now, you can use machines and stuff like that, but you're still going to pay somebody at least 1 hour, plus whatever the initial cost for the machines. And then that blanket has to be packaged. That blanket has to be shipped again, probably shipped again. And you think you're going to get all that for less than $25? It might be difficult to bring the blanket business home. I haven't had a chance to try out the blankets yet. I know a woman friend, one of the things that I wanted was something longer. And because the one that I use on the couch, my feet hang out. They're like dangling participles. And, get a little cold. And so I said, I just want to make sure it's long enough, but would it fit on the bed if we ever wanted to put it on the bed? So she said, the smallest one fits perfectly on the bed. So, cool. I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up for a couple of reasons. One, I got the blankets. But most importantly, as we think about is the president of the United States going to be successful at bringing businesses back to the United States? At what cost? At what cost to the makers, in this particular case, of blankets? Now, I'm not going to go out once or twice a week to buy something new, tell you that it was made in another country to see if maybe that business is going to come back. But I'm going to ask you, the next time you go to the store and you're going to buy something that you don't normally buy, like a blanket, check not only the price, but check to see where it was made. And then we can do that comparison. If it was made in India, if it was made in Pakistan, if it was made in Myanmar, or you name your Indonesia, what do you think they pay the workers in those countries to make the blanket, the moccasins, whatever the case it is? And do you think that for the same price, we can get workers here in the United States to make that product? And then we can, one of the things that I like about being a talk show host is bringing things to you that we can talk about, because until we sit down at the table, we don't have to be in the same room sitting down at the table, but until we have the dialogue, nothing, at least in my mind, nothing is really going to change. I think the president's got the right idea, let's make stuff at home. Let's keep the money here at home and circulate it, and then let a few dollars go overseas, as opposed to keeping a few dollars at home and letting a whole boatload go overseas. But I don't know that we have that opportunity right now. I was reading, where's that story? In a headline, just a headline out of today's Boston Globe, where it was talking about the workers, that have been, I don't want to say they've been furloughed. They haven't been furloughed yet. The government shutdown. Here it is. Local federal workers say they've never seen a shutdown like this. Well, how many shutdowns have they seen? But anyway, that's the headline. And then the paragraph story. With no deal in sight to end the federal shutdown, government workers in the Boston area are seeing their paychecks shrink or cut entirely. Well, it is a shutdown. I am curious how you are seeing your paycheck shrink. You shouldn't be getting paid right now. So how is it shrinking? All right, or cut entirely. Learning they are newly furloughed or facing layoffs. The one thing that we should realize about Donald Trump is when he says he's going to do something, you might want to take him seriously. He may change his mind, but you should take him seriously. He's talked about cutting government workers, particularly government workers in blue states. So I would think that you are facing some type of layoff. And if you are, you might want to start going out and looking for regular work. Just my thought. Next sentence. They're dipping into savings and taking side hustles to make ends meet. And they say they've never seen a shutdown this chaotic or this seemingly vindictive. Well, I'll leave the vindictiveness to whomever. It's been 1 week, and they've never seen anything quite chaotic. Didn't the last one last 35 days? And what are we on, day 9 or day 10? If you count weekend days. So, to these federal workers, welcome to the real world. Look at your next door neighbor who's trying to figure it out while you have been going off to work, maybe pushing paper. Maybe you didn't hear the conversation yesterday on the Chris McCarthy show. People complaining about their gas bill, and they know it's going to go up, and they know it's getting colder. Have you been shielded because you are a federal worker? Well, maybe you should start looking at things. That same next door neighbor pays for you to make a halfway decent living. And pardon us if you have to take on a side hustle. There are many, many people in the greater New Bedford area that have side hustles to go along with their regular gig because they're having a hard time making ends meet. And so you have lost your full-time gig, and I'm sorry that you lost it. I really am. I feel the same way that I've always felt, that our government is way too large. But I'm sorry you did not realize that before. And so now, while you have been getting every damn holiday off, why, if you work in a particular position and you have to work overtime, you get paid overtime. While you get good health care, your next door neighbor isn't quite as lucky as you are. And your next door neighbor is also paying for you to have that kind of luck of the Irish, as they might say. So while we feel sorry for you, there's only so much sorry to go around at this particular time. And this one sentence talking about the federal workers, they're dipping into savings and taking side hustles to make ends meet. Hello! How many people do you think that is? And maybe I should, instead of taking it out on the federal worker, maybe I should be pointing this to the Boston Globe, because it's the Boston Globe that actually wrote that paragraph. They're dipping into savings and taking side hustles to make ends meet. Really? Again, I feel sorry for them, but I don't know that they're doing anything that anybody else around here and around the country isn't going through. What do you think, Mr. and Mrs. Federal Worker? What do you think the farmer is going through now after some of the cuts from the Trump administration? And you're worried about making ends meet. What is that farmer supposed to do? Because quite frankly, the harvest season is over. What is that farmer supposed to do now, while you are worried that you have to dip into savings and maybe take a side hustle? Are you one of the Uber drivers that I saw last night? So, again, pardon me if I have that little streak in me today, but are you the listener, not the federal worker, are you missing government workers not being on the job right now? Have you been affected. If you are the government worker, you are affected. If you have to do business, maybe go to a courthouse, whatever the case may be, you might be affected. I have not been, and I certainly hope that I don't become. I am a little leery. I might want to think twice before I board an airplane, knowing that the air traffic controllers are going through that blue flu where I don't think I'm going to come into work today. And honestly, I know they've got a serious job, but I can't blame them. I can't blame them. They're not getting paid. They're not getting paid. And who was really expecting them to show up except for the passengers that are taking off and landing at airports, and of course the pilots and the crew that are on these jets. But who can blame them if they don't want to go to work? Because they're not getting paid and they need that side hustle in order to make the ends meet. How long do you think this can go on? My heart of hearts says it could go on forever and ever and ever. We've got a president who's blaming the Democrats. We've got Democrats who are blaming the Republicans. It's that blame game going back and forth, back and forth. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I could be wrong. I hope, at least as far as the blame is concerned, I hope that part ends soon. And if the president is indeed going to make these cuts that he's talking about, the sooner, the better. So those federal workers know for sure, and they can really, instead of just picking up side hustles, they may be able to turn that side hustle into a business, or they can go out and look for a full-time gig somewhere. 508-996-0500 is how you get on to Freedom Fools today on WBSM.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
This is WBSM.
I made you, you know it's true. Mr. Potato Head, I made you. I is nothing else true. Mr. Potato Head, I made you.
Here's what's happening this weekend on Town Square Sunday. We'll tell you about a documentary film coming to New Bedford that outlines the dangers of social media. Reverend David Lima and Kathy Rutkowski of the Children's Advocacy Center of Bristol County will join me in a discussion about Can't Look Away, the dangers of social media. We'll also speak with Anthony Barbosa, a New Bedford native and internationally known photographer. An exhibit titled I Return with a Feeling of Us is now being shown at the New Bedford Art Museum through November 23rd. And hoorah for the United States Marines. It's their 250th anniversary on November 6th. We'll tell you how a local group is planning to celebrate. I'm Jim Phillips. Join me for Town Square Sunday. Sunday morning at 6 and 11 on 1420 WBSM and 99.5 FM.
The government may be shut down. Legitimate business funding remains open. See for yourself at legitimatebusinessfunders.com. Legitimatebusinessfunders.com.
There's no better fool than the Freedom Fools. Now, back to Brian.
The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza.
That was a while ago, and that is the perky spokesperson for the White House right there. I have heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I'm going to bring it up now. because I heard it from a fairly reliable source. One, that apparently we are going to be sending maybe up to 200 troops in a more or less peacekeeping fashion over to the Middle East. And what was the other thing? Oh, the rebuilding of Gaza. I'm willing to bet that it's not going to cost us our tax dollars. But I would not be surprised if there are U.S. companies just chomping at the bit, waiting to get one of these contracts, because it's going to be an ginormous project to clean up. And I mean, imagine it, when we think about construction around here and there's a demolition job. Well, thanks to the Israelis, the demolition part has already been done. There's a few more partially standing buildings that still need to be knocked down, but by and large, everything's been knocked down. Now you got to haul all of that crap out of there and then start building anew. Boy, if you are in the construction business, oh, Donald Trump is in construction, isn't he? Real estate and development. You think he's going to profit at all through all of this? Do you think that maybe he's going to get a couple of nickels and dimes for all the effort? He might not get the Nobel Peace Prize, but I bet he's going to get a big chunk of change from his Riviera on the Gaza. That's my name for it. 508-996-0500. And the president did come up with one yesterday. He gave a speech in the Oval Office, called the press in. And it seems that Pfizer, drug company, AstraZeneca, drug company, are going to be offering medications at a discount. And you know where you are going to get these medications? It's going to be a new website. It's not open right now, but it's supposed to open up in January. The website has two very large pictures of guess who? And it says, and a promise that the site is coming soon in January 2026. Who do you think those pictures are of? You guessed it, the President of the United States. And the name of the website, don't be too shocked at this one, TrumpRx.gov. TrumpRx.gov. And according to the paragraph here, the Trump administration announced that both Pfizer and AstraZeneca will offer medications through Trump.rx.gov, which the administration says will allow people to buy drugs directly from the manufacturers. Wow. I guess that's a major discount. But if you're one of the suppliers, all of a sudden, you know what? There's always somebody that's going to get hurt. Anyway, that potentially is good news, even though you're going to end up doing it through TrumpRx.gov. And you're going to go direct. You'll pardon me, but I do look at things from this angle, this profit angle. And I'm not sure that it's illegal, but I think it does cross that line of being a little immoral, where the president, don't you think that maybe he's getting a cut of the deal here? You go through my website and you can buy directly through the manufacturers. There's got to be a kickback in here somewhere. I don't see Moderna's name, Pfizer and AstraZeneca. And both of those are two very large drug companies. Just saying. as they say, as we learned through Watergate, follow the money. Follow the money. As I said, I like to bring up stories, equations on this program and on Brian's Beat that make us talk and think about particular issues. I am a libertarian, plan on remaining a libertarian. The other day, I'm not sure if it was Tuesday, what day it came out, that two Boston city councilors have an agenda. I'm not sure if it's coming up this coming Wednesday, as in 3 or 4 days from now, or if it actually happened during the tail end of last week. But these two city councilors are holding a hearing, Boston City Council chambers, to discuss the role of publicly owned grocery stores in addressing food insecurity. Food insecurity means folks don't have access to high quality food like other places might. And this is something right out of the Mandani playbook. And I say it like that long before he got onto the scene. There are other places that were actually owning, other cities or towns owning public grocery stores. Now, when I first heard about it, I said, you got to be kidding me. But as I flipped through my Constitution, this is something, the U.S. Constitution. If a city or a town, or for that matter, if the Commonwealth wanted to develop publicly owned grocery stores, it's allowed to do so. And so I started thinking, well, if you're allowed to do it because you're not forbidden by the Constitution, what might be good for New Bedford might not be good for Marion. So if New Bedford wanted to do these publicly owned grocery stores, that's fine. That's what I would say. That is fine. I don't have to shop at those stores. So what's the big deal? Now, on the surface, the big deal is these stores are publicly owned. If you have too many, all of a sudden you're going to drive the private sector out. At the same time, the publicly owned stores have to be good enough in and of themselves to warrant people to go shop at these stores. These publicly owned stores aren't going to have to worry about paying rent. Whereas if you are Shaw's, Stop and Shop, Trucci's, Market Basket, you pay rent and associated fees for the parking lot and whatnot in order to exist at that particular spot. That would not be the case with a publicly owned store. So to me, that sounds like an unfair advantage. That's why I wouldn't want one in my town. But with food prices being what they are, and for many people in a city like New Bedford, a city like Boston, a city like Worcester and Springfield, I can see the advantage of folks in those communities having a publicly run grocery store. If that's what they want to go to, if they feel happy about it, I wonder about this. You are trying to tell me that you're going to get better pricing at these publicly owned stores. Well, if they don't have to pay rent, I don't know about the utilities, but if they don't have to pay rent, that's a huge amount of money that they can take off of their expenses so they don't have to charge as much. I guess my big fear is you have too many of these stores. Now all of a sudden you're taking the Stop and Shops and the Market Baskets out of the backyard. And as we have seen with schools, maybe that should be a prime example. Look how difficult it is to get charter schools in a city like New Bedford. Look how difficult it is to get more private schools because of the cost factor, because you've got a system right now that is a monopoly. And I would worry that these publicly owned stores grow. You know, you make X amount of money, all of a sudden you're able to open up another store because, hell, you're not paying any rent. Then you open a couple of more stores. I mean, that is a business model in and of itself. And then what? So as long as it's not my city, my town, I'm okay. But my fear is you try something like this in the Bostons, the Worcesters, the New Bedfords, the Lawrence, the Springfields, and the next thing you know, they're going to be popping up everywhere. 508-996-0500. Thank you for your patience and good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
When you said publicly owned grocery stores, all I could think of were PXs. And you know the stores they have around military bases?
Yes, I do.
But I can't see the government. I mean, grocery stores are not money makers or vast money makers, and I can't imagine why any town or city would want a grocery store, available for the public.
So I'm going to give you one very direct reason. Control. They would be controlling food prices.
Yeah, but as I said, you'd really have to be a man like Mr. DeMoulas who runs Market Basket. You'd have to really know how to make it work.
Well, you can, if you're a nonprofit, you can always find a what do they call those? A food bank to come in and run it.
I suppose.
Yeah, and organic folks, they can come in and run it. You can get anybody to run it, and there's no rent. They don't have to pay rent. One of the reasons grocery stores have a hard time, I don't know where you live, but I can see the parking lot right now for the Stop and Shop in Fairhaven. That Fairhaven store is massive. I mean, the rent over there, it's got to be, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000 a month.
But they have a good store.
They have a good store. You're absolutely right. And Stop and Shop is a major chain. They have figured out how to buy one and then multiply their stores. It doesn't take rocket science for people who get paid on city budgets to figure out, okay, so let's go in and bring in this person and let that person do that here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, watch out for it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I appreciate the call. Yes, the profit margins are really short. And if you're talking a major supermarket, you're going to have to have a lot of product in there. I mean, I never realized, when I go shopping at a Stop and Shop or a Market Basket or whatever, how many products are on the shelves, how many different brands and whatnot. But if you are in a city like New Bedford, where there is still open space, a lot of open commercial space, I can see, I had in my brain a couple of places where they could put not a major supermarket, but a pretty sizable supermarket and start from there and then build a couple of more. What is going on with that space where Shaw's was? Yeah. And you know what? That's not too far from the back of the train station. There are many places where I could see a supermarket or a grocery store popping up that the city somehow, some way decides to run. Let me preface all of this by saying I have not talked to any New Bedford city councilor or the mayor in regards to starting one of these stores. I think the major reason why I brought it up is the fact that people have been complaining, and I get it because I'm in that camp, but complaining about Ma'am Danny and this idea of government-operated grocery stores. And if we are in New York City, which we're not, but if we're there on a regular basis, you've got high rent prices, you have high utility prices, and access to supermarkets is very difficult. So this guy, Ma'am Danny, has come up with a solution that works for New York City. It might not work in a Dartmouth where lots of people have cars, or Westport where people have cars. Folks in Westport, they've got their options for grocery shopping. Fall River, Dartmouth. Fall River or Dartmouth. If you live in Mattapoisett, do you have a supermarket? I've been to Mattapoisett numerous times. I don't recall seeing a supermarket there. Folks go to the Stop and Shop right around the corner from me here, or they will take the extra drive and go to the Market Basket. You might have a few that go out to Wareham. Same thing if you live in Marion. I have no idea what the folks in Rochester do. But these are communities where people are used to driving. If you live in a city like a New Bedford, you may have a driver's license, but you might not have a car. You can use public transportation, whatever. Same thing with Fall River. Same thing with Worcester. There are quite a few people in Worcester that do have cars, but there are many more that don't. Same with Boston. And so if there isn't a grocery store close enough, you find yourself going on to buses or the subway, and you're taking a train, or you're calling Lyft or Uber to get your groceries home. Whereas, as Mandani has suggested, have 4 or 5 of these stores. Now all of a sudden you've got people who are able to get to a store. But as I see it, as more people go to these stores, they're not paying any rent. They're going to be able to develop more stores. And all of a sudden, now you're in direct competition with the private sector. And I could see the same thing happening around here. I don't think that these publicly owned stores are going to be stores where folks from other towns can't go to. So if there are some good deals, why wouldn't somebody from Dartmouth take a trip to the publicly owned store in New Bedford or Fairhaven if they can get a better deal there than they might get at Market Basket or the Stop and Shop? So I think that this is something that we need to keep both eyes open about. Mandani has come up and partially solved the problem for New York City residents, or for many New York City residents. And we see that a couple of Boston City councilors, they want to talk about it. How long will it be? You know, we'll probably have to ride out the election. But how long will it be before there are New Bedford city councilors touting the same thing? And I think it's something to be concerned about. The immediate action will be relief. But down the road, direct competition. What? And imagine this. What happens if one of the two Stop and Shops in New Bedford decides, hey, we can't compete against this government-operated grocery store, and they pack up their bags and they leave? Now that space is available. I don't expect the government to go out and buy it, but I would not expect another grocery chain to come in. Why would they? Because the government-operated store can offer a better deal, because the government-operated store doesn't pay any rent. I believe this is something that we, as a people, need to worry about. It does solve an immediate problem, but what it also does is it opens up the crevice wide in order to make another problem.
Children should be educated and instructed in the principles of freedom.
WBSM.
When you want a hot meal without a big deal, what are you gonna pick?
People ask all the time, who the heck is Low Cost Airlines? Well, we're not just one airline. When you're talking to us, you're talking to everyone. We are the discount supermarket for all airline tickets. Plus, we have all the airlines and always have the best prices. American, Delta, United, plus all the specialized international airlines and a lot more. And we make it easy. We guarantee you'll talk to a live human in 60 seconds. You can have the rate you need and have your trip booked in 5 minutes. Now, how cool is that? And remember, when you're talking to us, it's like talking to every single airline available with one fast phone call. All you need to do is call and find the best prices to fly wherever it is you want to go. So are you ready? Call Low Cost Airlines right now. 800-221-6085. 800-221-6085. 800-221-6085. That's 800-221-6085.
You know how politicians take advantage of a crisis. Would it be okay if I do the same? The Small Business Administration is closed during the shutdown. However, owners still have a viable option. It's called alternative capital through legitimate business funders. At legitimate business funders, owners can get up to $2 million with no collateral in just a few days. To find out more, go to legitimatebusinessfunders.com. legitimatebusinessfunders.com.
Freedom Pools on WBSM. Here's more with Brian Thomas.
Don't underestimate these guys. These aren't a bunch of, sandal wearing local yokel.
Welcome back. I've just came across a couple of quotes dealing with this grocery store stuff. From Senator Elizabeth Warren. I think people are tired of hearing things like nothing we can do or the billionaires wouldn't like it and don't want to have to pay more in taxes. I think part of the answer is no, you get out there and you try these things. So in other words, she is in favor of at least trying these government-operated stores. Not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised about that at all. This guy, John, and it's very difficult to pronounce his last name, but he is the chief executive of a supermarket chain. He says that this will lead to radical socialism, collapse our food supply, kill private industry, and drag us down a path toward the breadlines of the old Soviet Union. Now, here's the, he might be right. He really might be right. But one of the problems is he's not coming up with the solution to those New Yorkers' problems.